Well, the Total War Warhammer series has been in the hands of players for more than 2 years now, and though it certainly had its fair share of divisive moments, if you're on this channel, there's a fair chance you think it's a pretty damn good game. And if there's one thing we can almost certainly agree on, it's that a talented modding community can make a good game great, and that has certainly held true for this Warhammer trilogy. There are hundreds upon thousands of mods on the Steam Workshop, from custom siege maps to immersive battle banners, economic reworks, and even one that frees Morathi's bags of sand. But very few have left quite as indelible an impact on our little sphere of the gaming world as Faith Overhaul, and with almost 80,000 subscribers, it has become one of the go-to modifications for Total War Warhammer 2. Now, if you've never heard of the mod before, either because you're new to the series or you've been living under a warpstone boulder, I recommend you go watch my Faith Overhaul 2 overview video where I cover all the basics. That link will be in the description below. But most of you know all that stuff by now. I've obviously done a ton of videos for this mod over the last 2 years, but something new is coming, and I want to cover it. So the wait has been long, but a new update is arriving today, Wednesday, June 20th, and with it a massive amount of content. One of, if not the biggest patches the SFO team have ever released, and with it, a whole suite of campaign and faction overhauls, new units, 150 new skills spread across pretty much every legendary lord in the game, and a heavy focus on the Queen and the Crone, Norsca, and the Warriors of Chaos. There are way too many changes for me to possibly cover it all in one video, so instead, let's keep the focus a bit shorter and a bit sweeter, and spotlight a few of the big changes coming to Chaos and the new toys they have to play with, and then we can show a really entertaining free-for-all with a bunch of the new units on the way. And to get things started, Sartorial the Birdman is recruitable in campaign now. If you beat him, you can force the champion Azinch to join your cause, and you're gonna want to use him because he now has full access to both the Lore of Metal and the Lore of Shadow, as well as 2 new spells that we'll cover in a minute. Archaon gets free access to the Swords of Chaos Regiment of Renown, while Sigvald gets his Mirror Guard, and the tech tree allows you to devote your campaign to the blessings of a single god, altering the stats of all your units based on who you decide to pick, should you forgo the boons of Chaos Undivided. Khorne Berserkers are in, and they are brutal. Massive bonus versus infantry, and they can activate Rage the Blood God for Rampage to increase all their melee stats and vigor substantially, while damaging themselves, and they use the Norscan Berserker animations in full plate, giving them a very savage approach to combat. Guardians of the Dark Prince's Desires are essentially Slaaneshi Chosen. Really high AP damage, 45 move speed, and an AoE debuff called Visions of Pleasure that lowers weapon damage and melee attack by 25%. Sons of the Last Plague are Nurgle Reaper buddies with regeneration, super slow movement speed with only 26 speed, but they have 120 armor, and an ability called Touch of the Plague, which is basically Verminous Valor that summons a cloud of noxious gas that knocks back enemies, deals direct damage, and lowers enemy vigor. Zealots of Change are Tzeentch support casters with a ward save and 3 bound spells. Soul Leech of Tzeentch lowers enemy magic resistance, melee defense, and deals direct damage. Unholy Pact slightly heals allies in an AoE and grants immune to psychology, and Sword of Change summons a single unit of Chaos Spawn. And speaking of Spawn, the Weird Spawn has been completely reworked as a huge single entity, Regeneration, Terror, Frenzy, Sunder Armor, and an active called Rotten Regeneration, which replenishes HP, lowers melee defense by 25, and prevents him from moving for 15 seconds. So you'll definitely want to be using that out of combat. I haven't had the opportunity to play the SFO Chaos campaign yet, but with this patch, it sounds like a really good time to start one up, as we're finally getting a lot of that ruinous power flavor they've been lacking since 2016. So we're at the Lost Temple today in a free-for-all that should do a good job showcasing a lot of the new unit additions and changes to combat. For this one, I'll be taking the reins of Chaos with Nurgle Chosen Scythe Infantry in the Vanguard, who perform great as frontline combatants with a dash of Ebola to share with the boys, and Khorne Berserkers are animals. Just the way they move adds so much to what they bring to the table. They truly feel superhuman when they charge into combat and start punching things with those brutal dual axes. And it might be obvious by now, but we're rocking with an undivided theme here. A few blessings from each Chaos God makes the whole world burn, and burn it shall in the fires of change, with the Tzeentch Zealots and the Weird Spawn, Paragons of Mutation, who synergize exceptionally well together. And the Chosen of the Dark Prince have a kind of a Forsaken theme going on, except with that huge armor-piercing damage and that debuff they can throw down on the main line. They've got quite a bit more punch while maintaining that extra mobility with 45 speed. The Swords of Chaos are the terrors they should be. Insanely good stats across the board, more than 1000 HP per entity, and searing flame attacks that lower armor and enemy hit chance while doing damage over time. And I wouldn't feel right without bringing the Lord of the End Times, the Ever-Chosen himself, who with only the Slayer of Kings active can get up to 1000 weapon strength. But to the south, march the Norskins with a host of marauders and monstrous beasts from Wintertooth, led by Throg Daddy himself, a voluptuous troll king with anger issues and powerful regeneration. His bile damage has been increased substantially and adds the lethal poison debuff. Let's take a look at an old friend from the Norsca campaign, the Great Mahard of the Bloodford, a group of mammoths with massive charge bonus of 108, bonus for Large, Rampage, and Frenzy, so a different role and more disruption potential than in any of the single entity pachyderms. Fimir now have the Bone Crusher passive, which lowers enemy movement speed by 25% and melee defense by 7, as their great weapons punch through shield and armor, and you just saw the Cold Voider, who makes an appearance as well that can summon the Howling Winter Vortex while engaged in melee on the ground. And for the Dark Elves, Manticore Lords are nobles with lethal poison that function as bonus for large armor-piercing monster hunters, great for isolating high-value targets, and the Black Art Fleet Masters are an incredibly badass-looking elite support unit with Smoke Bomb, a bleed DOT on their melee attack, and an aura that buffs chance to hit for all nearby friendly units. They work very nicely in tandem with a heavy Dark Elf infantry build and look especially spicy next to Black Dark Corsairs, but Crone Halibron is here as well on her Altar of Cain, and her Cursed Blade has already been fixed in this update, so no nuking entire enemy armies into oblivion, no cheesing like a boss. She functions exactly as you'd expect her to function, while her Ice Blades have Frostbite and Chilling Aura, which is minus 36% speed in an AoE. And I believe in the lore, those are actually Marathis, but they're brought here just because we want to show off some of the new units and have a good time with those. The High Elves have Alathanar, as you would imagine, firing an essential bolt thrower with the Moonbow of Lilith. Extremely powerful. Shadow Warriors, very good from range and have some decent melee capabilities. And the Keepers of the Eternal Flame Phoenix Guard are insane. I mean, they're just really good. Super low model count with crazy high stats and a debuff for enemy units called the Hour of Death. We'll do our best to send them to meet their creator soon enough. You know the Fireborn well at this point, some Sisters of Avalorn, Court Guard Spear Ladies hanging out, and we'll get the party started as the Shadow King starts sniping some Marauders from long range. And sometimes I can't help but picture him as like that edgy 14-year-old back on the COD 4 days, like super into the sniper culture with M40A3 ACOG, Red Tiger camo, doing some 720 no-scopes. I could totally see Alathanar being that kid who said he had sex with all of our moms over Xbox Live. Let's shift over, and we're actually going to split this into two parts, the Norsca Dark Elf engagement and everything else, because I don't want to miss anything important, and there are simultaneous engagements going off all over the field. So we'll watch the Norscan and Dark Elf fight first. Sisters of Slaughter on the left flank, anchoring the line there with their high MD and their great physical resistance. Norscan Trolls will be the line breakers first into the fight. They're going to be taking a lot of shots from the Dark Shards, and that armor-piercing bolt damage will do a lot as they charge in, but hopefully the regen and the, well, pretty crappy leadership might mean they rout pretty quick here, and you can already see they're wavering. Throwing the Troll King into it now, and he's a line breaker if I've ever seen one. That gigantic hammer will carve a path with the Fimir Balefane following up behind, and they'll create a lot of space for the Norscan infantry, which wouldn't be able to take shots very well. Now Throg into the Bolt Fiends already, laying about with that hammer, and a Pit of Shade's about to go down, and that will be a very nice vortex in the center of the Dark Shards on the left flank. We'll suck them up into the Nether Realm and do a lot of damage there. We'll put it into slow motion and check out what else is going on. Norscan Ice Trolls and the Great Mahard of the Bloodford. Look at that charge. So satisfying, and this is why an entire unit of Mammoths is so much fun. I mean, you just saw that impact instantly shattered as that Pit of Shades finishes up, and beautiful. Like, they're going to be able to get into the back lines very quickly, but for now, Dark Elves are holding pretty well. That front line is giving the Dark Shard some time to fire in, and all those armor-piercing bolts are certainly a problem as the Manticore Lords are chasing down the Scion of the Cold Void. It's trying to land. Looks like we just got a Penumbral Pendulum as the Cold Voider will land in the back of the Dark Shards, and now it can unleash that brutal Howling Winter Vortex, which will actually send out two vortexes in both directions, and look at that. If that hits an entire blob of infantry, it will absolutely demolish it, and that's hitting the Dark Shards pretty nicely, although I think you'd like to get it on the Sisters of Slaughter, or maybe a more high-value target, because those Dark Shards are going to go down anyway. Manticore Lords are a problem for those Mammoths, though. They will swarm those entities in the unit, and when one of those Mammoths gets isolated, they'll get cut to pieces by that bonus force large and lethal poison. And that was brutal. They lost 2 models very quickly there, while Crone Hellebrand causes terror with the Gaze of Cain over on the left flank. Vortex finished up and demolished an entire unit of Dark Shards there. Very nice Howling Winter Vortex from the Scion of the Cold Void. But more Norscan Ice Trolls on the flank looking for something to murder. Problem is, those Manticore Lords are just a great counter to a lot of what the Norsemen are bringing, and it doesn't seem like their Javelins have really made much of an impact. They might have gotten shut down early on. What hasn't been shut down, though, is this gigantic Frostworm feasting on the range units in the back line. But the Northmen are crumbling around it, and with so much killing power on the field, Steel Faith Overhaul doesn't always have very long melee engagements, and though both sides have beaten the crap out of each other, Hellebrand and her Cauldron of Blood only rocking a sliver of HP, Dark Elves seem to have more in that melee fight that has performed well. And I get it's a common meme to say a faction is weak every time it loses, but people literally say that about some of the strongest factions in the game. In this instance, I don't think Throg's army had the leadership required to deal with all that terror. The Trolls and Mammoth Herd ended up getting routed very quickly, and without those monsters in the fight, there's just no way simple Marauders will be able to hack their way through very regimented Dark Elf shield walls. Manticore Lords were used very nicely there on the correct targets, and so the Norscans crumbled. But I think they can match up great versus plenty of other factions, and maybe even the Dark Elves. That will require more testing, though. In the meantime, Archaon on the other side of the field, unleashing the fireball from the lore of Infernos, and it's going to be a beautiful one that rips straight through the center of the Illyrian Reaver Regiment of Renown, kills 9 of them, and look at that health drop on those Horse Archers. Beautiful cast from the fireball there, and the melee engagement looks to be about to begin in earnest as the Slaneshi Chosen close in. Now, very interesting engagement brewing out here on the flank. Now, if you know the Dragon Princes, the Fireborn Regiment of Renown for the High Elves, they are, of course, very flame resistant. They have 70% flame resistance, and in Steel Faith Overhaul, both Chaos Knights, Swords of Chaos, and actually Archaon himself all deal flaming damage, which is very problematic when you're dealing with a unit that deals or has 70% flame resistance. So you can see we got a beautiful charge off, even got a flanking charge off, and we've dealt very little damage so far. That's a problem. Flaming Sword of Ruin will be the only way for our Chaos Knights to deal well with that unit, because it'll give us the magic resistance to then cut through the physical that it has. Meanwhile, the Khorne Berserkers have gotten in the main line. These are the Court Guard, Illyriel's bodyguards actually. They're spear, kind of like War Dancers, and they have a high AP and buff for friendly nearby units. And they can be very good, but they're not going to do very well against Khorne Berserkers, which, like I said, they fight like they are superhuman, because they are. They move insanely quickly when they get into charge distance, and when they attack stuff with their axes, they will actually send them flying like they're heroes or lords. So they have a lot of killing power. So does the Weird Spawn, who's now in the center of the Pyrmane Company, and those Keepers of the Eternal Flame. You see Flaming Sword of Ruin out there in the background trying to cut through the physical resistance of the Fireborn. If the Dragon Princes die, Chaos Knights can sweep in from the flank and wrap up a lot of these Shadow Warriors, but it'll be a long time coming for those Dragon Princes to go down. In the center, the Nurgle Chosen, Khorne Berserkers, and the Weird Spawn in the back, causing so much havoc right now. Doing a great job dealing with a lot of those Grey Shadow Warriors and the bodyguards of Alathanar. The main infantry fight is going relatively evenly so far, although in the center, I would say that those Court Guards don't have long to live. On the flanks, doing a lot better, although some of the Sisters of Avalorn have actually been committed to melee here, probably not intentional. And the armor-piercing combination of the Pyrmane Company and the Keepers of the Eternal Flame have absolutely kicked the Slaneshi Chosen's ass. They look like they're about to rout. Over on this flank, the Scions of Mathland fighting desperately against the Nurgle Chosen, and their size and the Touch of the Plague going off, imbuing a massive amount of poison and debuffs all across the line there. Will be very nice. Do damage over time that way. And Chaos Spawn from the Zealots of Change have been summoned in the back here. But this is a bit problematic because they've been summoned and they're not moving. And I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about them for about a 30-second period after I summoned them, still getting used to all the new stuff, and they're just gonna kind of sit there as our cavalry goes at it, and those Illyrian Reaver archers continue to fire in. Finally, I get them under control, but that's after they've been shot at by the Grey and the Shadow Warriors and Alathanar for a good 30 seconds, and with that degenerating health over time, that was a problem, and now our right flank is buckling a bit under the weight of the Phoenix Guard assault. But in the center, our Khorne Berserkers are into the middle of the Sisters of Avalorn, and they will butcher them with those dual axes. And the Weird Spawn still doing a bunch for me here, and I must say that I absolutely love that unit. It is super fun to use, has a lot of mobility, has that health regeneration on a single entity, which is super nice, and its attacks will basically just carry it through enemy formations, which means it can dodge a lot of arrow fire too, just by nature of attacking. And it's doing a lot of work for me right now, tying up a lot of archers. But there is an ability on it that's a bit of a problem, and I believe I have just used it here. There's a thing called Rotten Regeneration. I have used it, and I was trying to figure out what it does. I had forgotten what it did, and I forgot that it actually roots you in place. So I've used it in combat now, and that made him a really good target for all those warriors who got some great shots in on him. And when he's not moving, he'll drop very quickly because he doesn't have very much armor. So the Weird Spawn took a lot of damage there unnecessarily. Also lowered its melee defense, popping that regen. And so that was a net loss for me. Definitely a big micro mistake there. And both my Chaos Mon have actually been mismicroed so far. So definitely making some mistakes here. But the cavalry has finally beaten the Fireborn, and they're in the back lines. And we have definitely won the infantry fight. Pyramid Company are still in there. So are the Phoenix Guard, but those are the only two still left alive. The rest are just range units, and Archaon and his Swords of Chaos can now have their pick of the litter in the back, running them down, slaughtering them, preventing them from firing, and basically just being an absolute menace. And that is what they're doing. It'll take a bit to finish up those Shadow Warriors because they are much better than most archers are in melee combat, but with those beautiful charges coming in, even Shadow Warriors will not be able to resist the beautiful charges of our Khorne Berserkers and our Swords of Chaos, and we are absolutely shredding them. And with the red line so close by, they won't really have room to escape and regroup. They'll basically just have to run off the field. And that's what I want. I don't want to see them come back. I need to rack up as many points as possible. Khorne Berserker is definitely doing that very nicely for me, and they're probably my favorite of the chosen variants so far. They just feel so thematic, so corny. I'd like to see them maybe get a little bit more crimson armor. They look a little bit brown right now for my taste. Well, other than that, yeah, in terms of their killing power and how they function, absolutely beautiful unit. But these Phoenix Guard are still beasting it up. I think that might have been one of the first entities to go down. Now they're starting to drop. You see those flames blowing up, and that basically just means that they're letting out a death blow as they die. The Mark of Azurian exploding them, dealing damage upon their death. But against Khorne Berserkers, maybe not going to do that much. I'm not actually sure how much damage those explosions actually do. I imagine it's not particularly impactful. Maybe equal to the value of like one attack from the Phoenix Guard. But Norsca has come over to join the fight. Cold Voider flying overhead, probably looking for some breath attacks. There might be some juicy ones opening up very soon as the Khorne Berserkers and remnants of the Keepers of the Eternal Flame continue their fight. More Shadow Warriors firing in, and Archaon has actually cornered the Shadow King right at the white line. I love calling it the red line because that's what it was in Shogun 2, but he's dead now. He goes down, and that blow to leadership will signal the doom of the High Elves as the Dark Elves start making their way over. Now, these Manticore Lords are interesting. There are a few units you've probably seen this game that should immediately catch your attention, and while thematic to a point, there are definitely going to be some people who think they go a little bit too far in stretching the established canon and spirit of the army books. And if you do feel that way, remember there are some mods that can get rid of those units you don't want to see in your campaigns. I personally don't hate the unit, as our Swords of Chaos completely overrun those Phoenix Guard and just butcher them from behind. Beautiful there. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate them. They look completely badass, and nobles riding Manticores in Nagaroth is not a complete abstraction of the lore, but I do think it gives the Dark Elves an aerial superiority unit that I'm not sure they need or deserve. So there are elements of it that I don't really agree with, and I think you can probably say some about the Black Ark Fleet Masters as well, and maybe a few other additions. I don't always 100% agree with everything SFO adds, obviously. But again, there are some mods if you want to get rid of those. With that said, Manticore Lords are totally killable, and we're going to do our best to finish them off here. Now, Throg and some Fimir are still alive, so they can still make an impact on this game. Jack coming back with those 2 units now, and Cold One Spear Riders on the flank have bonus for Large and AP. I believe the bonus for Large is only in SFO. Charging in now, Archaon, Swords of Chaos, and our Halberds nearby. We're going to look to finish them off, and we should be able to. I mean, these Swords of Chaos are dirty. They are extremely powerful, and as the Manticore Lords charge in, we're going to get a fight with them as well. Now, Halberds are coming in from the flank. You can see them directly behind Archaon now. This is almost a full strength unit of Manticores, and with the Halberds coming in from the side, and Archaon and the Slayer of Kings, and backed up by the Guardian passive, that 15% physical resistance. Very powerful anti-large capabilities right there, simply because we have the weapon strength to do it, right? Halberd, of course, much better in SFO than it is in regular vanilla, and they have the power to do a lot of damage here, but even the Swords of Chaos and Archaon by themselves, they can go toe-to-toe with Manticore Lords pretty nicely because they're just so strong, and they're doing so. Those Manticores dropping very fast as the Khorne Berserkers charge into the Sisters of Slaughter, and this will be a gift that will, oh my lord, look at that. That will please Nurgle, that will please Khorne, that will please Kane, that will make them all very happy. And explosion ripping through the center of the Sisters of Slaughter, but the Chaos Infantry on their last legs completely here. Dark Elves overrun them, Khorne Berserkers drop to a man, and the Nurgle Chosen also run, even though they did get that poison debuff off. Dark Elves don't have a ton of infantry left, but certainly have the most powerful army left on the field. But what can Throg and the Fimir do? What can Archaon and the Swords of Chaos do? Can they do something here that will turn the fight in their favor? High Elves have been completely eliminated, no longer able to get points, but Dark Elves and Chaos, pretty close. Doesn't look like Norsca will be able to carry the day, but they might still be able to swing the outcome by messing around with the Dark Elves in the back lines as the Fimir and Throg engage those Cold One Spear Riders. But doesn't look like they're actually going to be able to do it. Throg is disengaging. He's not actually routing, but his Fimir are dead to a model. They're all completely butchered. And a beautiful burning head ripping through the flank of some Bleak Swords and the Sisters of Slaughter will send the Dark Elves into a frenzy, charging forward into the Halberds now, and that will be a very fun engagement for the Sisters of Slaughter, who will make some sacrifices to Eldrazor, the Lord of Blades. But Swords of Chaos, look at that charge! So manly into the teeth of the Dark Elf defense, and a handful of those powerful cavalry, causing a terror rout in and amongst the Dark Shards, coming back to give the Guardian passive to Archaon, and another unit of Manticore Lords now, again, at 2/3 strength. Halberds in there as well. Archaon, can they carry it? Can they take down these elite Dark Elf monster hunters? And it's a big deal right now. This is a very important engagement, because if those Manticore Lords go down, they're going to feed a lot of points to the Chaos Army. With that said, though, Archaon and Swords of Chaos will obviously feed a lot of points as well if they're taking damage. And they are. One of the Manticore Lords goes down. They terror rout. Cold One Spear Riders charging in. And this looks to be the final engagement. Can the Swords of Chaos hold the line here? Will they be able to carry the day with their Ever-Chosen? They're going to rout. Swords of Chaos are gone. It's just Archie, who in regular Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, sometimes called the Never-Chosen, but here, absolutely not. He is a god with his magic, and a god in melee, the Slayer of Kings, flashing in the sunlight, and decapitations, dismemberment everywhere, and every time he swings that sword, completely demolishing these Cold One Spear Riders. And with a couple more attacks, he will kill more of the unit, but he cannot carry the day by himself. And that should pretty much be the end of the battle. Dark Elves will take it, but even though they won pretty convincingly over on their side, Chaos almost brought that back, and almost had that one. There wasn't very much left. Helebron had like maybe 1,000 HP left. And besides that, the rest of it could have easily terror routed to Archaon. So could have gone my direction with a little few changes here, even on the Norscan side of the engagement. But that was a really fun one. I absolutely love those free-for-alls. They're a complete blast. And we got to see a lot of units in action that are very thematic and fun. And SFO, in terms of multiplayer balance, it's getting to a point where it's going to be extremely hard to truly balance both campaign and multiplayer. There's just so much getting added that I don't know that it's going to add a... If you're looking for a completely balanced multiplayer experience, I'm not sure that it will offer it. But in terms of just sheer outright Warhammer goodness and having a blast in free-for-all or 2v2s or 1v1s, and especially in campaign, which is obviously the core focus of the mod, it's just really fun. And it's getting to a point where mod releases like this can be almost as hyped as official releases for some people. And that's a great thing for everybody who enjoys playing it. I know I certainly do. I like to keep a balance. Sometimes I just want to play vanilla. Don't really want to play modded gameplay, but I can highly recommend SFO2 by Venris and the mod team, especially if you are into the campaign side of things. And they'll also be hosting a multiplayer tournament soon too, so if you have balance ideas or suggestions, please feel free to pass those along. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you all in the next video. Good game to Iconoclast, Phoenix, and Jack. Peace out, boys and girls. I'll see you in the next one. Good night, sweet prince.